What is the yellow peril phenomenon? Yellow peril is a phrase that depicts Asians as a threat and danger to the Western civilization due to the high number of Asian immigrants here. Americans are seeing Asians as a threat since they're willing to work any job that's available to them, even if it's a low-wage job, which made Americans think that Asians were stealing all of their opportunities. They think that Asians are going to invade their lands and disrupt their lives if more of them continue to immigrate here. An example of yellow peril would be the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, which banned Chinese immigrants from immigrating to America for 10 years. This was the first and only law that restricted a specific ethnic group from immigrating into the United States. This was an anti-Chinese act made by government since they didn't want Americans to feel threatened or outcompeted by them, since the Chinese were willing to work any job, even the hardest and dirtiest job.
What happened when yellow peril started to impact Western society? Many Americans began to feel intimidated by upsurge of Chinese immigration to the United States in the mid-19th century. Xenophobia or hate of immigrants, as well as more complicated issues including labor disputes and altering national identities, were also factors. Chinese immigrants are concerned that they will compete unfairly for employment by working for cheaper salaries. As both groups labored at the lowest end of wage range, Jewish immigrant railroad laborers found themselves in competition with Chinese workers. Furthermore, because Chinese religious traditions were not a part of Judeo-Christian past, they were seen as heathen. People who believe in white supremacy also object to the notion of Chinese men marrying white women and having mixed-race offspring. Fears about Asian Americans due to discriminatory laws that restrict immigration barred Asian immigrants from applying for citizenship and impose unfair tax on Chinese-owned small companies.
What and when is the origin of yellow peril? The series of acts aimed to exclude Chinese workers from migrating and working in U.S. embodied the social injustice at that time. The yellow peril's origin can be traced back to the 19th century when the USA adopted the first Chinese Exclusion Act and enforced it. The act prohibited skilled and unskilled laborers from China from entering the U.S. because the cheap foreign laborers are comprised of healthy males who do not use any federal facilities or benefits. Furthermore, the U.S. passed a revision of Chinese Burlingame Treaty of 1868, the Angel Treaty of 1880, which suspended Chinese immigration for 10 years. The act was renewed in 1892 and became permanent in 1902. The Discrimination Act against Chinese immigrants did not stop until 1943. Congress passed the Magnuson Act when China became the U.S. ally against Japan in World War II. However, the Magnuson Act limited the number of Chinese immigrants, and other Asian countries were still on the no immigrants list.
Why is the yellow peril phenomenon important to know? The yellow peril phenomenon brings negative effects to Asian community. It is hard evidence that prejudice against Asians has never disappeared since 19th century. It is important to know the yellow peril phenomenon because it shows how the Western society distorts the image of Asians. Let more people know about the yellow peril phenomenon will not only let more people know the correct history and experience about Asians, but also could inspire more and more people to resist social prejudice against Asians. At the same time, knowing the yellow peril history also helps Asian kids have proper cognitive facilities about themselves and their race.
What are some examples of the consequences of the yellow peril phenomenon? The ultimate consequence of yellow peril was death. Many people died from the oppressive nature of yellow peril and the anti-Asian stigma, from being forced to work significantly laborious jobs, to being placed on many restraints, and receiving constant verbal and physical hate and harassment, Asian immigrants sustained a very hard lifestyle. All of these hardships made it very difficult for Asian immigrants to raise children and continue on their family line. Yellow peril essentially became an excuse to deter Asian immigrants from moving to the United States. And what better way to deter people than to subject them to years of violence that ultimately made living hard?
How should we influence the new generations of Asians to fight against the social injustice? Nowadays, people pay more attention to racial discrimination, and the most important or the most focused is Black Lives Matter. We need to make people learn about Asian Lives Matter. I think books, movies, and activities are the most popular media for the new generations of Asians. And if we use those media to advertise our mind and thoughts, we need to put the crucial history in front of their face and let them know that the world is not a peaceful world for everyone. Asians need to stay together and help each other, and we can do our best to make the society improve or become better. Those activities can let others show their respect. We can earn equality by ourselves.